Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. We were talking about impeachment and an impact on the Democrat-Socialist primary with the Iowa caucus just less than 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
So we need to go to the front runner there. It's still Joe Biden, technically. And Joe Biden has come up with more Bidenisms that should inflame the passions of the caucus goers. I mean, these are, I think, of a kind like his message to coal miners, which is if you can go 3,000 feet down into the earth, then you can learn how to code. So the wonderful future he has planned for coal miners.
Oh, yeah, transferable skills, definitely.
He's not a big fan of those little creeps that make video games either.
Yeah, he came out against them yesterday, calling them little creeps, and that's what he's doing. He's training insights on video game makers in a recent New York Times interview, calling them little creeps, as he recalled one who said he was an artist because he was able to come up with games to teach you how to kill people.
Uh-huh.
So one of those, I mean, that's...
Yeah, these creeps are arrogant. These creeps are arrogant, those that make games that teach people how to kill. I don't know that a video game teaches somebody how to kill. It's not an instructional video, Joe. Boomer. Boy, talk about his connection to people under the age of 100. This is why Biden, the reason he's leading, 65 plus. Huge lead over 65 with 65 plus. He's getting hammered below that age demographic. And this speaks to why Joe Biden is the weakest nominee the Democrat Socialists could level up. He doesn't bring the base, and he doesn't bring any energy because he doesn't have much currency in his own party. I
mean, he really is Sleepy Joe.
Younger
and they have to
demos.
bus in high school students to some of his rallies because nobody cares. All the kids are at Bernie Sanders rallies.
In addition to that, he made this other rather remarkable statement because he said that he would fire immigration and customs enforcement agents who arrest and deport illegal immigrants who are not guilty of felony crimes. So you don't get deported in this country if you're not guilty of a felony crime in a Biden administration. And when it comes to felonies, even, that doesn't include all felonies like drunk driving because he doesn't count drunk driving as a felony. I mean, the law does. If you get a DUI in Illinois, you're facing felony charges. But Joe Biden doesn't count that as a felony. So you are here illegally and you get a felony DUI charge. You get to stay. Oh, man. He's having a really difficult time trying to pantomime his way to the AOC crowd. Really is. For more on 2020 and impeachment trial day one, we're pleased to be joined by Daniel Flynn, senior editor of the American Spectator and author of the book Intellectual Morons and a Conservative History of the American Left. Perfect segue, Intellectual Morons, from Joe Biden. Daniel Flynn, we're pleased to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So before we get to the trial of the century, day one, what's your handle on the Iowa caucus and, say the top echelon? I guess we have to include Klobuchar because she got the co-endorsement of the New York Times. The top 4 or 5 candidates in the field.
Well, I think that because of the impeachment, it looks like Buttigieg and Biden have the advantage, and maybe by design. I always thought, I mean, Nancy Pelosi outsmarted me, and I'm paid to follow these things. I always thought that she was delaying the impeachment so as not to compete with the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary. It turns out she wanted this. She wanted it to compete with the caucuses and the primary because it gives someone like Biden and Buttigieg, two of the more mainstream Democrats, an advantage over Sanders and Warren. And I mean, it's tough. I don't know if it's going to work because all eyes are going to be on Washington, and Sanders and Warren will be in Washington. But I do think that was their intention.
I don't know. I don't know about that. See, I mean, I think there's a tendency to impute more skills on some people than they actually possess, and you can't say that, it seems to me, and then also square that with the position of Democrats, House and Senate, which is for witnesses. Because if you were to get that, then you have Joe and Hunter Biden before before you testifying in the Senate.
They're not going to get witnesses. Everyone. I mean, she can ask as much as she wants. She knows she's not going to get that, and if she does get that, they're going to vote it down because you're going to have, both the Bidens. Maybe you'll have this fellow whose name I can't pronounce, Charamella.
Yeah, the whistleblower, right?
Yeah, so they didn't. They want to have a lot of theatrics, and I think part of the theatrics is to demand witnesses. But obviously, once they get witnesses that Republicans want, they're not going to go for that. They want Bolton. They want some other people in the administration. They don't want the Republicans to have their own witnesses. And obviously,
it would seem to me, though, I mean, with respect to Biden specifically, if he's going to be the default establishment candidate, such as the establishment exists. So you want Biden on the trail more? Or
say again?
I'm asking, their position is they want Biden on the campaign trail more, or do they want him to maybe take the Bloomberg approach, it's commercials we need more of from you that have been prepackaged, rather than Joe on the stump talking about DUIs aren't felonies and game developers are arrogant punks and coal miners need to learn how to code and anything else that may come out of Joe Biden's mouth at any time?
Well, he's a pretty flawed candidate, but he's going against some very flawed candidates. And so I think the difference between Biden and, say, Warren is, Biden is somewhat likable, and it's a little harder to like Warren. And I think Bernie's positions make him a little bit difficult to like. I think people look at Buttigieg almost the same way. I don't want to take you back too far, but in 1980, when Ronald Reagan ran, there was a guy named Phil Crane from your state,
right.
Illinois, and I think he basically ran as the insurance candidate so that, I'm the younger version of Ronald Reagan. So if you think he's too old, vote for me. And I think with Buttigieg, he's saying, listen, I'm the younger version of Joe Biden, who would be 78 on Inauguration Day. If you think he's too old to be president, vote for me. And, as far as likability, I think Buttigieg has probably done a better job than most of the rest, particularly the top-tier candidates, in getting voters to like him. And I think with Warren and Sanders, they're a little bit too ideological. Klobuchar seems to be doing a lot better in Iowa than she is elsewhere, but it doesn't seem that she's going to go anywhere. However, I will say that with the caveat, there has been sort of a revolving door of front runners in this race, and maybe it's Klobuchar's turn to take over.
Yeah, she's doing well because they can relate to her. She's from Minnesota, Iowans, and 60% of Iowans aren't committed to their first choice candidate. And I lived in Iowa for 4 years, participated in a caucus, and what Iowans love is face-to-face contact. So I think this is a huge boom for Pete Buttigieg while the other senators are away in Washington. They don't have access to their phones. There's going to be no viral moments. They can't relate or get in touch with possible constituents. Do you think I'm crazy?
I don't. I mean, I think that's I think Buttigieg and Sanders are going to have the advantage. Now, what's going to happen in New Hampshire is interesting because if you have, what would be interesting to me is if Biden does not win in Iowa, say if you have Buttigieg or someone else win, they go to New Hampshire. It looks like Bernie probably would win New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. Then it opens up a bit, and you have people like Bloomberg, who with the money could steal a few states, and then all of a sudden you have a very I'm not suggesting they're going to have a brokered convention or anything like that, but you have a very muddled field if you have someone other than Biden winning in Iowa. And again, I think it will get very interesting if he does not win in Iowa, because you're going to have to wait till South Carolina for him to actually get a victory.
Well, right. I mean, but the Bloomberg play is a Super Tuesday play, right? I mean, he hopes that nobody gathers any momentum, sort of as you're suggesting. There's somebody wins Iowa, somebody different wins New Hampshire, somebody different perhaps wins South Carolina, Biden's firewall, as it were. And Bloomberg can just pound the airwaves in all those Super Tuesday states and sort of creep up on the field. And if he has a big Super Tuesday, then he reshuffles the race.
But, isn't it interesting that the last mayor of New York City to actually compete in primaries and caucuses
Yes.
had that same strategy, Rudy Giuliani? It didn't really work out for him. So I don't know that it's going to work out for Bloomberg. There's
Well,
a gamble there. There's
yeah.
a chance. It's possible.
But the difference, of course, is that Rudy Giuliani didn't have $2 billion to flood the airwaves. That's a bit slight difference. Yeah, I mean, so no, you're right though. I mean, it is very Giuliani-esque. I'm going to wait till Florida, and by the time it got to Florida, Rudy was out of the race. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely not intuitive, but these aren't intuitive times. Perhaps I don't know. It seems to me though, with respect to President Trump, combined with his speech today at Davos, where he's focused on U.S. economy and the global economy, but of course the global economy as relates to U.S. economic strength, and that will be repeated at his State of the Union speech, which is also a couple of weeks away. And so the quicker that this impeachment matter gets done, the better it is, and the quicker he can turn the page, the better it is for him.
I think so. I don't know that this is good for Democrats either, because what do you do the day after impeachment is over? Do you go impeachment the sequel? I mean, I have no idea what their strategy is. They sort of will have shot their shot, and that will be it. And so what do? You have a base that's, I don't know if they're demoralized or if they're out for blood, meaning I don't know if they're energized or demoralized after they lose this thing. I mean, there is a lot of theatrics. There is a lot of drama here. The one part that's not very dramatic is we all know the outcome. We all, and usually you don't go into a movie that you know the ending to. And I think in this case, there's a lot of, every American who's paying attention knows how this ends. So once it does end, what's the payoff for Democrats?
No, they're using it as a label for Trump. So they'll say, during the campaign, he's an impeached president. You can see the campaign ads now. They write themselves.
Yeah.
Sure. And I think if you go back to when Clinton was impeached, I mean, if you see in the lead up to that, what happened with those elections, which I think were very historic in 1998, because usually you have the president's party losing in an off-year election, and they won. They did, he did pretty well. That may happen with Trump, where there was overreach. People will look at Nancy Pelosi, people look at Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler and some of these characters that came out of this impeachment hearings to sort of greater prominence. I'll say, I don't really like these people. They're over the top, they're extreme, and they may go, they may go into Trump's arms. Now, the difference between now and then is that, everyone's sort of made up their mind at this point. I don't know that there's too many independents anymore, people in the middle. Everyone sort of knows where they stand on Trump. So maybe it doesn't change things at all, but there is this danger that Democrats have of overreach.
Yeah, and people probably don't recall, but after he was acquitted, President Clinton, he rose to his highest favorability approval ratings of his presidency. It was over 70%. Now, the difference there, here is he had a press corps that was opposed to his removal from office as well, and impeachment and removal. And so they, told that story relentlessly, which buoyed his favorability ratings. President Trump's not going to have that same thing. But it will matter the quality of the arguments that are presented for those watching over the next week by the House managers as well as the president's team.
Yeah, I think it will matter, but I think everyone has pretty much made up their minds. And I also think that most people, if you want to impeach the president, you really need to have something strong. You need to have something big. And I think for most people, this doesn't rise to that level. This is I don't want to say it's kind of politics as usual. You have presidents who do this kind of thing, who have sort of quid pro quos, who want to get a certain result, and they have a carrot and stick approach. There's nothing new here, and so I think for a lot of people, they're looking at this and saying, well, gee, these are the same people that had an impeach Trump website the day he was inaugurated.
Yes.
They tried to impeach him on emoluments. They tried to impeach him on racism in Charlottesville. They tried to impeach him on Russia collusion. They just want the guy impeached. The facts kind of don't matter. What they really want is just to get him out of office, or to tar him, or to tar his name.
He is Daniel Flynn, senior editor of the American Spectator, author of Intellectual Morons and a Conservative History of the American Left. Daniel, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to Dan and Amy on your smartphone. Download the AM 560 mobile app today at 560theanswer.com.